U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's surprise visit to Ukraine and the meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky and other government officials has put the focus on U.S. support for Ukraine over the last few months, running into tens of billions of dollars. On Monday, Yellen announced that the United States is transferring $1.5 billion to Kyiv. Earlier, President Biden had also vowed $500 million in additional military aid for Ukraine. Reports say the U.S. has given Ukraine more than $77 billion in economic and budget support funding. That's beside funding from the EU, UK, and other countries. This year, Ukraine is estimated to need $40 billion to $57 billion in external financing to support its economy. Yellen also welcomed Zelensky's action to strengthen governance and address corruption. A big chunk of the foreign aid given to Ukraine is also in the form of military aid. The weapons sent to Ukraine range from portable rocket launchers and armored vehicles to rifles and vast amount of ammunition. Interpol and even Russian officials have warned arms sent to Ukraine could be smuggled out. There are concerns over arms ending up on the black market and in the hands of organized criminals in Europe and beyond. Reports say experts have expressed fear that Ukraine may become a source of weapons for criminals in Sweden. In recent years, the Nordic nation has witnessed a rise in gun violence and gang crime. Reports say Sweden saw 388 shootings, resulting in 61 deaths and 90 attacks with explosives just last year. The number of deaths were up by 1/3 over the previous year. Also, investigators say that some weapons meant for Ukraine are in the hands of Finnish criminals. Earlier, Nigeria warned that Ukraine war was funneling arms into the Lake Chad basin. However, Ukraine's government has pushed back against Western concerns. Well, for more on this, we are joined by Adele Nazarian, Media Fellow at the Gould Institute for International Strategy. She's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Well, I'm so glad we're joined by you, Adele, and I'm also very glad that we're finally addressing these issues that Interpol has been warning about for months now. How regulated and transparent is the process of use of the massive funding and arms sent into Ukraine from the U.S. as well as the EU?
Hi, great to be on with you again. Thank you for that question. You know, we can never guarantee the full transparency or accuracy or efficacy that this nearly $77 billion worth of aid will actually arrive at its intended destination. That's why I always advocate for getting even foreign aid, humanitarian aid, on a blockchain. But I think that from what I've seen is with Treasury Secretary Yellen's visit there to the region, to Ukraine, it does signal a greater, more hawkish, I would say, approach towards ensuring that the aid actually does arrive where it's supposed to, from humanitarian to financial to military. And so I think that some probably red flags, considering the past history of how financial transactions have occurred in that region specifically, may have led to the Treasury Secretary's visit to the region herself to keep an extra eye on what's going on.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, there have been reports in the past of huge corruption in the Ukrainian government, and that has been a cause for concern, notably for people here in the United States as well. I know you touched on, the monitoring of funds to an extent, but how much of this trip by Yellen do you think might have a domestic angle to it as well? There is a lot of concern here in the United States about the funds that we're sending to Ukraine and how it's being spent.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at it, in 2020 alone, the amount of money that was sent to other countries, I think it was about $3.3 billion to Israel, for example, and $250 million, if not mistaken, to Ukraine that year. And so since the escalation occurred on February 24th of 2022, with Russia invading, that's just an astronomical jump in the amount of money spent there. So not only is the fact that the U.S. has contributed so much foreign aid assistance to Ukraine, along with our European allies and counterparts, also that have also stepped in and provided aid to Ukraine. You're right. The fact that Yellen herself has gone ahead and paid a visit to the region is sending a message to Vladimir Putin and to Russia that this is essentially a detente also with the United States, and a war with the United States indirectly, because when you're putting so much of your own funding, especially military equipment, towards a war of this scale between two warring nations, then it's absolutely a signal that the United States is also involved and indirectly or directly at war as well. So that's a very, very strong message. But as far as it goes in terms of seeing the full transparency and delivery of that aid to its intended recipients, corruption, of course, has existed in that region. Corruption exists in, if you want to be truly, truly objective about it, in every country. It's just that certain countries have different regulations and a judicial system governing them that allow for the obfuscation or the more skirting around it in a different way. And of course, Ukraine is no stranger to this. But I do believe that with the massive amount of aid that is going into the region, perhaps a more appropriate and important way to truly, truly ensure that the money is going to where it's supposed to go is to actually get foreign aid, humanitarian aid on a blockchain so that it can be monitored, it's transparent, there's no discrepancies, and the start to finish are very, very accurately transcribed and recorded.
Okay, Adele, thank you so much for that. Adele Nazarian, Media Fellow at the Gold Institute for International Strategy. Thank you so much for joining us on WION, and we look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thank you so much.